Assalamu alaikum everyone, and a very warm welcome. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most intense and honestly brilliant dialogues you'll ever come across, the showdown between the prophet Moses and the Pharaoh of Egypt, right from the pages of the Quran. This is really a masterclass in how unshakable truth speaks to absolute arrogant power. So let's get right into it. Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand what's really going on here. This is so much more than just two people having an argument. It's a fundamental clash, a collision of two completely different ways of seeing the entire world. On one side, you have the simple, powerful truth of revelation, and on the other, you've got the ego and arrogance that comes with worldly power. And that really brings us to the central question we're exploring today. When truth stands face to face with a power that absolutely refuses to see it, what happens? How does that conversation even work? Well, this dialogue we're about to walk through gives us a fascinating, timeless answer.
All right, so picture the scene. Moses and his brother Aaron are standing in Pharaoh's court. Now let's really pay attention to how Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the known world, kicks things off. It is not an accident. It's a very, very calculated move.
Pharaoh asks, "So who is the Lord of you two, O Moses?" Now, on the surface, that sounds like a fair question, doesn't it? Almost like he's genuinely curious. But it's not a real question. It's a trap.
What Pharaoh is doing here is a classic power play called framing control. See, he already calls himself the supreme lord of Egypt. So by asking, "Who is your lord?" he's trying to force Moses to play on his field, by his rules. He wants to control the whole conversation before it even starts. People in power like that don't want truth. They want to control the narrative.
But Moses, wow, he doesn't fall for it for a second. Instead of getting tangled up in some political debate he can't win, he just brilliantly pivots. He completely sidesteps Pharaoh's trap with an answer that just blows the whole conversation wide open.
Moses' response is just a masterclass in power and simplicity. He says, "Our Lord is He who gave everything its form and then guided it." Think about that. The answer is so simple, yet it's absolutely cosmic in its scale. It's devastating.
And right there, you see the two worldviews colliding. Pharaoh's claim to be a lord is all about force, about status, about political power. Moses just completely redefines the whole term. He gives a new criterion for what it means to be lord. Did you create everything, and do you guide everything? It's a standard that Pharaoh, with all his armies and palaces, can never ever meet.
So, Pharaoh's opening move completely backfired. He's been intellectually cornered by a simple, undeniable truth. And when an arrogant person starts losing an argument, what do? They change the subject.
He immediately pivots and asks, then what is the case of the former generations? He's trying to drag the conversation away from this clear and present reality and get lost in the weeds of history. You know, what about our ancestors? Were they all wrong? It's a total distraction.
And this, my friends, is a classic deflection. When you can't win an argument on its merits, you create a diversion. Pharaoh is trying to dodge that powerful criterion Moses just laid out by muddying the waters with something else entirely.
But once again, Moses just refuses to take the bait. He calmly replies, "Its knowledge is with my Lord in a record. My Lord neither errs nor forgets." He just draws this clean, sharp line. He's basically saying, that's above our pay grade. It's perfectly recorded with God, who makes no mistakes. End of discussion.
And from here, Moses does something just incredible. He takes this huge theological concept and grounds it in the real world, in things nobody can deny. He points to the very earth we stand on, the paths we walk, the rain that grows our food. He says, look, these are signs for anyone who's willing to just think. And then he delivers the ultimate reality check, for Pharaoh and for everyone. We all come from this earth, and we're all going back to it. You know, power absolutely hates being reminded that it's mortal.
Now, the Quran tells us that Pharaoh was shown all of God's signs, but he just denied them and refused. The evidence was all there, but his ego just couldn't handle it. So when the arguments fail, what's the next tool in the tyrant's toolbox? The smear campaign.
And just listen to the complete change in tone. Pharaoh says, "Have you come to us to drive us out of our land with your magic, O Moses?" The debate's over. That fake curiosity from the beginning? Gone. Now it's just open hostility. The message of truth is twisted and reframed as an attack, as a political threat.
I mean, this is straight out of the tyrant's playbook, and it is shocking how timeless it is. First, you dismiss the truth you can't defeat by calling it a trick, calling it magic. Then you paint any call for change as some kind of foreign plot to take over. And finally, you turn a message of freedom for the oppressed into a national security crisis. This was thousands of years ago, but it sounds like it could be from this morning's news.
Okay, so Pharaoh has failed to win with his ideology, and now he's moved on to smears. He's got one last card to play. If you can't beat the substance, maybe you can beat it with spectacle. He proposes a big public showdown.
So he challenges Moses, saying, let's set a date, a time, a neutral location that we can both agree on. But notice the language here. It's all about control. Pharaoh wants a carefully managed public show, a stage where he thinks his court magicians can put on a better performance than Moses.
And really, this is the key takeaway. When truth becomes a real threat to power, that power will always try to shift the fight away from reality and into the world of performance and public image.
But Moses' response is just so bold. He accepts the challenge, and then he completely turns it back on Pharaoh. He says, fine, you want a show? Let's do it. On the national festival day, when the most people possible are gathered together, out in the open, in the bright light of day.
Just look at that contrast. Pharaoh wanted a controlled stage, a performance. Moses demanded maximum exposure, a huge audience in broad daylight. And why? Well, because tricks and illusions, they need shadows. They need a controlled setting. Truth isn't afraid of the light.
So this whole exchange gives us a perfect anatomy of denial. Truth just speaks simply. It states what's real, and it welcomes everyone to see. Arrogance, on the other hand, it's complicated. It has to deflect, it has to reframe reality, and in the end, it has to put on a show. Pharaoh isn't losing because he's weak. He's losing because his ego just cannot survive in the presence of reality.
Which leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about. The stage is set for this massive public showdown. But what happens when the performance is over? What happens when the tricks fail and the whole illusion just falls apart in front of everybody? Well, that's where this incredible story goes next.